Have you ever felt that the deeper you start to understand people, the more isolated you become? That the more you understand, the less they want to listen? It's not just in your head. Society has never liked those who think too deeply. Socrates was given poison. People laughed at Tesla. Schopenhauer, one of the greatest minds of the 19th century, chose to live in solitude. But before that, he saw something. He realized why intelligent people struggle in society, why the smarter they are, the less other people seem to understand them. But why does this happen? Why does society resist those who think differently? Imagine you start going to the gym, get stronger, and people cheer you on. Or you start making more money, and they admire you, even ask for advice. But then you begin to speak deeper truths, things that others are afraid to say or cannot say out loud, and people leave. It happens because when we are around someone who is more intelligent, something changes. It starts to feel uncomfortable, even if they haven't said a word. Psychologists call this the mirror effect, because smart people often reflect things back to us. They make us think, question, notice things we usually avoid, and that can feel threatening, not because they're trying to hurt anyone, but because their way of thinking shows others what they're missing. Their honesty can feel like a spotlight, and most people don't want to be seen like that. That's why deep thinkers are often misunderstood, not because they're wrong, but because they make others feel exposed. The story of Galileo is a powerful example of the mirror effect in action. Galileo was an Italian scientist who said that the Earth moves around the sun, not the other way around. At that time, the church strongly disagreed. They said his ideas were dangerous, and he was forced to say he was wrong. He spent the rest of his life at home, under strict watch. But today, Galileo is seen as one of the most important scientists in history, the father of modern science. But it goes even deeper than that. It's not just about individual reactions. There's something happening on a much larger scale. Society has built-in defense mechanisms. This idea was explored by thinkers like Schopenhauer and later confirmed by other psychologists. Whenever someone stands out, not by looks or money, but by how they think, the group feels uneasy, because groups are built on sameness, on shared values, habits, beliefs. So, when someone questions all that, even silently, it feels dangerous. Not in a physical way, but in a psychological one. That's why honest, intelligent people often face resistance. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because their very presence challenges the script everyone else is following. And most people don't want the script to change. They want safety, not depth, agreement, not reflection, and comfort, not truth. But why is that the real problem for deep thinkers? Why is this so important? Because when society keeps pushing someone away for being different, they eventually start to question themselves. Think about this. The intelligent person begins to wonder, maybe I really am too much. Maybe I do overthink everything. Maybe I should just stay quiet. So they shrink. They hide the best parts of themselves, their thoughts, their honesty, their sensitivity, just to fit in. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They nod when they want to speak. They pretend not to care, just to survive. But deep down, they do care. Because silencing doesn't make the pain go away. It just makes it quieter and deeper. Psychologists call this the false self, a version of a person that exists just to be accepted by society. But the cost? They start to lose touch with who they really are. And the worst part? No one notices what it's costing them, because they never saw the real person in the first place. The life of Nikola Tesla is a striking example of the false self effect. Tesla was a brilliant inventor, the mind behind technologies we still use today, like alternating current. But during his life, he was often misunderstood, mocked, and ignored. Society didn't know what to do with someone who thought so far ahead. Over time, Tesla withdrew. He lived alone, isolated, and his most honest self rarely found a place in the world around him. He didn't become what others wanted, but the cost was loneliness. Today, Tesla is remembered as a genius far ahead of his time. But during his life, he paid the price for staying true to who he was. But what if the problem was never with the deep thinkers? What if the pain isn't a flaw, but a sign of seeing the world with greater clarity? The more aware you become, the harder it is to ignore what others easily overlook. You ask deeper questions. You want truth, not just comfort. That's not weakness, that's awareness. Schopenhauer once said, "The less intelligent someone is, the less mysterious life seems to them." Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the greatest minds of the 19th century, chose a life of solitude. His ideas about human nature, suffering, and the will were far ahead of his time. Misunderstood by many during his life, he later became one of the most influential philosophers in history. So maybe you're not too sensitive. Maybe you're just awake in a world that's still asleep. So what do we do with all this when our mind sees too much and our heart feels too deeply? We could try to shut it down, numb ourselves, fit in, pretend, but that never really works, does it? The real way forward is not to shrink our depth, but to protect it. Not everyone will understand the deep thinkers, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Somewhere out there are people like you, who don't just want to survive, but to understand, to grow, to create something meaningful. And soon, we'll explore how to find and connect with like-minded people. But before that, we need to answer the following question. What is the main reason why being real can make deep thinkers feel alone? The psychologists discovered something called the pratfall effect. Here is what it means. People tend to like others more when they make small mistakes. If they spill their coffee during a meeting, or if they forget a word during a speech, it makes them seem more human, more relatable. Think of someone who's incredibly smart and always calm. Others might admire them, but it's hard to connect. Now imagine that same person laughs at themselves after messing up a line. Suddenly they feel more real, more like us. But here's the paradox. If the person is too intelligent, if they rarely slips, people may not feel comfortable. Such a person might feel judged or even threatened without knowing why. The more capable and clear-minded you are, the more others might feel insecure around you. Not because you said anything wrong, but because your presence reminds them of what they're not facing in themselves. They start to feel uncomfortable and try to distance themselves. But there is an even more important reason why smart people often feel like they don't fit in. It is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It shows that people with little knowledge often feel more confident than they should, because they don't know enough to see how much they don't know. But the more they learn, the more they realize how complex everything is, and that makes them question themselves more, not less. So while others speak loudly with shaky knowledge, someone might stay quiet, even if they understand more, and that can make people overlook him, or think they are uncertain. The story of Socrates is a powerful example of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where those with little knowledge often feel the most confident, while truly wise people question themselves. Socrates, one of the wisest men in history, openly admitted how little he knew, but instead of admiration, he faced fear and hostility. He was accused of corrupting the youth and sentenced to death. He drank poison and died alone. Today he is seen as the father of Western philosophy, and a symbol of humility, wisdom, and the price of truth. Einstein once said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." He wasn't being modest. He just saw reality more clearly than most. But here is another thing that makes it more uncertain, the spotlight effect. It's some kind of psychological illusion when we think that everyone's watching us and judging our every move. But in fact, most of the time, people are too busy thinking about themselves. Think about it. You say something in a group and it comes out a bit awkward. Later, you can't stop thinking about it. Why did I say that? What must they think of me? Or maybe you walk into a room and feel like everyone's staring, noticing how you look, how you walk. But if you ask them later, most didn't notice anything of that. This effect makes smart and sensitive people hold back, stay quiet. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they imagine they're being judged, all the time. But we are not under a spotlight. We're just under pressure, from our own mind. So, where does it come from? Why do we start doubting ourselves when nothing's actually wrong? There is one more reason. Society rewards what's average and punishes what it doesn't understand. You've probably seen it since school. The loud, confident kids who followed the rules got praised, but the quiet ones who asked deeper questions, often ignored or told they were too much. When someone starts a job, it's the same thing. They are expected to follow a script, be agreeable, not question why things are done a certain way. And if they do, they are called difficult, too intense, not a team player. It's not that society hates intelligence. It just doesn't know what to do with it when it doesn't fit the mold. Because deep thought often means challenging assumptions. And people fear change more than they fear being stuck. And that's why society does everything it can to make deep thinkers question themselves and their own thoughts. As psychologist Erich Fromm once said, the fact that millions of people share the same forms of mental pathology does not make them sane. And that's where the doubt begins. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because the world often misunderstands what it doesn't expect. When you think deeply in a world that rewards conformity, you are not seen as insightful. You're seen as difficult. But there's one strange detail here that most people don't see. Something we often sense, but are not fully sure about. It turns out that most people feel the same confusion. They just don't show it. Think about it for a moment. This is called pluralistic ignorance, when everyone secretly struggles but no one speaks up, because they think they're the only one feeling it. Imagine sitting in a classroom. The teacher explains something complicated. You don't get it, but no one else raises their hand. So you assume they all understand, and you stay silent. Later, you find out that half the class was just as lost. Now think about this. How many people around you also feel disconnected, pressured to fit in, afraid to be real? But they smile, nod, play along, because they think they're the only ones? We might feel alone because others are pretending, and they're pretending because they feel just as alone. Here the false consensus effect comes out. It's the idea that we tend to believe our thoughts and values are more common than they actually are. So when we start thinking deeply about the world, about truth, about meaning, about what really matters, we assume others must be thinking about it too. But then, they're not. They talk about small things. They chase approval. They laugh at empty things. And the intelligent wonder, am I the weird one? Am I too much? Here's a real example. You open up about something personal, hoping for a deep conversation, but they change the subject, or just say, yeah, that's crazy, and scroll on their phone. Or you share a new idea, something honest, something that took courage, and they make a joke, or say nothing at all. It's not just disappointing, it makes us question our own reality. But this isn't proof that the intelligent person is broken. It's proof that their inner world is different, and more rare than he thought. Do you feel the same sometimes? Soon, we'll talk about how to overcome this feeling, how to break free from it. But now let's step away from theory for a minute. Let's look at real moments, the kind you probably lived through yourself, simple scenes that reveal something deeper. Here are two important quotes, and how they show up in real life. As Jiddu Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Think about it. If everyone's chasing status, pretending, numbing themselves, and the smart person feels out of place in that world, maybe the problem isn't them. Maybe their discomfort is a sign they are awake, that they are not willing to play along just to fit in. They are not broken for noticing the cracks. Like when you're at a party and everyone's drinking, talking about gossip or money, and you're standing there wondering, is this really it? That quiet moment of misfit, it's not weakness, it's clarity. Hugh MacLeod once said, "The price of being a sheep is boredom. The price of being a wolf is loneliness." There's a cost to thinking differently, to walk your own path. The deep thinkers lose the comfort of the herd, but they gain the truth of their own voice. Like when you leave a group chat because every joke feels fake, or you stop pretending to like something just to belong. It's lonely at first, but it's honest, and honesty always leads somewhere real. Do you want to know what Nietzsche realized while thinking about the same issues with society? He once said, "Those who dance are considered mad by those who can't hear the music." Sometimes our ideas, feelings, passions, they just don't make sense to others. Not because we're wrong, but because they're not tuned into the same frequency. You start a project, and they say, "Why bother?" You talk about something you care about, and they blink and say, "Dude, chill." Now you understand that you just hear music they don't. And that's not a curse, it's a calling. So why does being misunderstood by society hurt so much? What is the root cause of it? We humans are social by nature. From the moment we're born, we look to others to tell us who we are. A baby smiles, not to express joy, but because someone smiled first. Our identity forms in the reflection of other people's faces. So what happens when that reflection is distorted? When someone sees the world more clearly than those around them, but people look at them as if they're the one who's lost? Evolution taught us that fitting in brings us safety. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by the tribe could mean death. Even now, part of your brain still believes, if they don't accept me, I won't survive. That's why it hurts so deeply, it's not being understood. It's not just emotional, it's biological. But here's the paradox. The very thing that once kept us alive, the need to belong, can now keep us small, silent, number. The world needs people who see differently, but those are often the ones who feel most alone. And maybe that's why so many of the greatest minds in history were outsiders. So, what did the greatest minds come to realize? What price do deep thinkers end up paying? As Blaise Pascal once said, the more intelligent a man is, the more originality he discovers in men. Ordinary people see no difference between men. Imagine someone notices things others don't, the subtle shifts in tone, the quiet fears behind people's words. They try to share what they see, and people look at them like they are overthinking, or worse, like they are trying to show off. So eventually, they stop talking. They keep it all inside. Hugh Prather said, "Loneliness is the price we pay for being ourselves." It's not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone. It's when we're surrounded by people and still feel like we can't truly be ourselves. We laugh when it's not funny and agree just to avoid conflict. And the real us only comes out when nobody's watching. And maybe that's the point. The feeling of being different, of not fitting in. It's a signal that deep thinkers are paying attention. They see what others ignore, feel what others suppress. And carrying that kind of truth in a world that fears it can be exhausting. So, is today's world a place where deep thinkers can truly thrive or just survive? We live in a world that rewards performance, not depth. From school to work to social media, we're taught to impress, not to reflect, to speak louder, not think deeper. But real insight often comes in silence, in watching, in noticing what others miss. The problem is, depth makes people uncomfortable, not because it's wrong, but because it's rare. When someone asks real questions, people feel exposed. When they don't laugh at shallow jokes, others feel judged. When they tell the truth, people feel like they are attacking their illusions. They didn't mean to, but that's what truth does. And so, today's world gently, or sometimes harshly, pushes deep thinkers to shrink, to be less honest, less curious, to go along, smile, nod, and fit in. But what if I tell you that modern technology makes it even harder? In today's world, something has quietly but profoundly changed. With the rise of technology, especially short-form content on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, the way people think is shifting. Information now comes in fast, shallow bursts. Quick tips, flashy visuals, one-liners that disappear in seconds. The brain adapts. People get used to instant stimulation, not reflection. They scroll instead of sitting with a thought. They crave simplicity, not because they're lazy, but because their attention has been trained that way. But there is more. With the rise of AI, content is now being produced faster than ever. Endless videos, articles, and quotes, all generated in seconds. Quantity is exploding, but depth is disappearing. Now the noise is louder, and the signal is harder to find. Thoughtful voices are drowned out by repetition and speed. And real insight, the kind that takes time and silence to form, starts to feel out of place. But deep thinkers don't move at the speed of algorithms. They need space, time, questions without quick answers. And in this culture of acceleration, they can feel more isolated than ever. Not because they've changed, but because the world around them has. But there is good news. Even in a world that asks you to hide, there's still a way to stay grounded. The real question is, what helps some people stay true, even when everything pushes them to bend? It's important that feeling out of place doesn't mean something's wrong with a person. It often means they are growing beyond the space they were in. Maybe the reason someone feels so disconnected is because they're meant to build a life that's more real than what they see around them. We're not here to be liked by everyone. We're here to find what's true, to build, to connect on a deeper level. And the first step is to stop betraying oneself just to feel accepted. Because the more people twist who they are to fit in, the more lost they become. But when someone starts honoring their own voice, even if it feels lonely at first, they begin to attract others who are doing the same. That's where connection begins. Not from pretending, but from being fully, unapologetically real. So, what can deep thinkers do when they feel like they don't belong? Here are 5 grounded steps that can help. First, don't rush to escape the loneliness. Let it be. Let it reveal what truly matters, not what the world demands. Second, create. Write, build, think. Give form to what lives inside. Smart and honest minds often feel lighter when they express, not when they explain. Third, look for signals, not crowds. Belonging rarely happens where everyone is trying to fit in. But sometimes, one real conversation, one unexpected book, one honest message is enough to shift everything. It's worth noticing what resonates. That's the trail. Fourth, protect the mind. Too much noise can blur a person's inner clarity. Some silence is not empty. It's space to remember what matters. Because the more the static fades, the clearer it becomes to hear something much more important. Not the noise of the world, but the voice within. And here is the bonus point. It's important to remember, not everyone is meant to belong everywhere. There are people out there, quiet, thoughtful, kind people, who understand without needing long explanations, who don't say someone is too much for thinking deeply, or too intense for caring about things that others overlook. They might be far right now, but they exist, and they will be found. And when that happens, something shifts. There's no need to perform, no need to shrink. Silence feels safe. Conversations lift instead of draining. And that moment is how you'll know. These are your people. The path to them always starts the same way, by being real. Sometimes loneliness isn't a sign that someone is broken. It's a sign that they are growing beyond the space they were in. A smart mind often walks alone, not because it wants to, but because it hasn't yet found minds that resonate at the same depth. Like a signal looking for the right frequency. Like a puzzle piece that doesn't fit where it was told to fit, because it belongs to a different picture. That pain you feel, it's not a weakness, it's the pull of becoming who you really are. So if you've ever felt like you don't belong, maybe it's because you were never meant to fit into a system that fears difference. You were meant to build something new. You don't have to change who you are to be accepted. You have to find, or create, the spaces where truth is welcome, where minds don't compete, but connect. And while that journey might feel long, you're not walking it alone. Somewhere, there are others who see the world like you do, who crave meaning over noise, depth over masks, honesty over approval. To find them, keep going, keep being real, keep thinking deeply. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more truth. And it starts with those brave enough to feel alone until they're not. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So don't trade that for fitting in. Stay honest, stay deep, and eventually, you'll stop feeling alone because you'll start being found. Society has never liked those who think too deeply. It fears what it doesn't understand. It mocks what makes it uncomfortable. Schopenhauer once said, "Intellect is invisible to the man who has none." So if you feel unseen, it's not because you have nothing to offer. It's because what you carry is rare, and the rarest things often go unrecognized until much later. But that's not a reason to dim your mind or soften your soul. Stay deep, stay real. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to be true to yourself, because eventually, the right people will understand. If this video resonates with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt misunderstood or rejected for thinking differently? Has anyone ever said you're too intense or that you make things too complicated? Let's talk about it together. If you want to keep exploring insights from the greatest minds in history, hit the subscribe button and watch the next video. Let's stay together, because something truly important is coming in the next episode.